we have been conducting online interviews and online examinations for 4 months now, and we've had a protocol and procedure. We have a assessment rubric at the back end of it. So I have been responsible for working with a team of other HODs and our dean to have a holistic profile for our inductees. So I will speak from that experience. I've also previously been a part of interview panels for Masters of Architecture and Masters of Design. So I also know how the knowledge or the expectation of the interviewer varies depending on what is your background, where you come from, and what is it that you are expected to already have knowledge of. So I'm also going to show you a little presentation just to kind of support all that we talk about today. Just give me a second. I'm going to just project my screen. In the meanwhile, if I may ask you to raise your hand if you've ever experienced an online interview, an online exam. I am given to believe that you are currently in the last leg of your 12th standard. So I'm guessing that you had gone off the campus before COVID hit us, and maybe many of you were not familiar with online education. Could you raise your hand if anybody out of you has an experience? I'm going to do this because this is not a formal, conventional classroom mode where I could see your face and understand if it brightened up that you are familiar. So I'm going to make a few comments which you may have heard about. There are going to be certain tips which I think are very useful. Being on the other side, I have understood that when students show certain things, we feel hopeful about their future. So I'm going to talk about those indicators, and I will keep my presentation very short so that I can give you a chance to ask questions if you have any apprehensions or questions about how this thing works, or how if you want to ask a question out of the presentation I make right now. So I'm going to start. Okay, so this interface is such that I can only see my presentation. So if you have any questions, you can either type them or you can raise your hand and we can come to chat later. So what is the purpose of the interview? So whenever you are going to interact with a panel, or you're going to interact with an institute or an university, there should be a certain kind of SOP. Now that is something that may be provided to you. First off, it might come through the university's email to you, or if there is a contact, email or phone number provided, then you should always inquire beforehand. So this is in a way going to formulate your plan of action. Let us understand what exactly is an online interview. Now, when you don't have a chance to walk in with your physical portfolio, you might be very good at making things, for example, but you're not able to kind of take it with you. You are not able to showcase your, you might have a great body language in person, you might be really vibrant, and you will be very pleasant. And so you kind of, that's a little downside of an online interview. But the upside is that there are a lot of things that you can do research about. And since it's a very short interaction, you have got a chance to kind of create an impression that you want them to have about you. So if, for example, you are going into a design school versus you're going into an art school, so there is a difference in what is expected of you, both in terms of your knowledge and in terms of how you behave. For example, uniqueness, or a kind of an existing style or a taste or a vision about yourself and your design career or your future in profession. So it's a very short time, so you should always be prepared. And the first part of that preparation is actually knowing the purpose of an interview. Whether you are going to, for example, what will be the format? Would you be asked questions? Would you be asked to showcase your portfolio digitally, in the sense that would you be asked to, for example, project your screen? Would you be asked to do some exercise or critique something? By critique, I mean, is the format of the interview such that you will be shown an image and you'll be asked a question, so that you should be, armed with some sort of larger screen so that you can see it very well, or you should be armed with knowledge about, say, current affairs, or by current affairs, I mean what's happening in the design industry. And probably one of the most important questions is going to be your reaction to COVID-19, or your sort of knowledge about how the design world is reacting to COVID-19. So it's important to know what the format of the interview is going to be. Okay. So it could be either a personal portfolio review, which means that your main questions, or say 80% of your questions, are going to be focused on how or what have you submitted in your portfolio. If it is only a personal interview, then they will focus on asking questions to understand your, say, critical thinking abilities, or your engagement with your surrounding, or your, inquisitiveness, which means your line of inquiry or the method of inquiry, or your interest in social issues. So, those kind of things could be asked. So for preparing very well for that short interview, you need to know the purpose. Okay. Let's go quickly to the next one. What do you do while you prepare? So you first understand the process, like I said. So it could be through an email exchange, through a phone call, or by reading the which is given to you for your call of interview. They would have sent you a letter, or like an SOP. Many universities, for example, Parsons and all, they have an online SOP. They have their interview SOP. They always give out what is it that you are expected to bring to the table for this day or that time. So you should be armed with that knowledge. Okay. Know your portfolio. Now, if it's a portfolio based interview, of course, you may say that, okay, you already know your portfolio inside out, but there is no harm in making a few notes about some of the projects. For example, there are usually questions about what was your favorite activity, or what was your favorite work, or for example, we very often ask, have you ever engaged in a creative exercise as in school, or maybe as just because you're passionate about it? If you have, then what was it, and why were you satisfied with the outcome? These are the kind of things that interviewers want to know, because they don't know you personally yet, and they are trying to evaluate your appropriateness for the course, the amount of enthusiasm and the kind of attitude you will bring to the school. Because design as a profession is, so that goes for most of the creative professions, including architecture, planning. They are all not just aptitude, but they are also attitude based, in the sense that you have to have the right attitude to be able to cope up with the kind of education which is imparted, and also to be able to innovate within that curriculum and later on in profession. So the premium institutes are looking for the right kind of attitude. So know your portfolio. Probably have those kind of, like, what were your failures in the portfolio, something that you excluded, maybe you should know about. Okay, so if they ask you a question suddenly about, have you ever conducted any activity which can benefit others or many other people, or it was for a social cause? So you forgot to, for example, include your work which you did for your school's MUN. So model UN sessions or United Nations sessions have lots of other paraphernalia, like activities on the periphery, except for only being the participant in the MUN. So you might have created, for example, a promotional video, or you might have really addressed through your writing the issue which would be addressed in that UN session. So if you forgot to add, nothing to worry about. If this kind of question comes up, then at least it's there in your list of things that you've done on a side which says, okay, so non-academic activities that you could have included in your portfolio and you've forgotten. It's always okay to say that there. And if you really have the ability to kind of, you have put it somewhere online, you can also share a link right there in the chat box, and they can, as reviewers, look at it. So you can leave them that, yes, I have uploaded the video on YouTube. You could take out some time to look at it. That doesn't harm. It only shows that you are already prepared for it, or you are very active, and that there are many aspects to you which you are not including in your CV or portfolio. But yes, there are many aspects to you. So one is that. Then knowing your portfolio also means knowing all the methods and processes that you have implemented or used. For example, if you, and also it's very good to tell it in a story format. Maybe while they are going through your portfolio, or you are going through your portfolio, you could show them how you probably have evolved. You started working on certain things 2 years ago in a certain fashion. Like, for example, I could say, if you're applying for product design and you initially started copying your favorite products, or you started drawing the products to get an idea about how something is appealing to you, or how is it, say for example, ergonomically sound. So you will be holding the product, you will be measuring the product and then drawing the product. So you can say that. And then from there, probably you mature to actually taking it apart and putting it back. Do you ever indulge in those kind of activities? That also shows your curiosity or your inquisitiveness and your ability to also make things, or want the quest to make things, like you already want to make things. So you could explain to them like that. And eventually, if you just started designing new products as per any kind of brief that was given to you, say for example in a classroom scenario or in a coaching scenario, or you found something annoying to use yourself and you wanted to change that, and you had sort of upgraded that product by adding one or two features, and that's a part of your portfolio, you already know that. But the whole story behind it is how you evolved from just sketching. So while you're talking about the product, maybe 2 lines you could say, so I started off by measuring and drawing, and then I kind of took it apart, and then I understood what was the function inside and what kind of gadgetry I was dealing with. And then I have now finally been able to, after 2 years, create at least one variation of one of the features. Okay, one is that. Then moving on. So okay, that's all about portfolio. There are more things. If you have any particular questions, I can address them later. Research about the school. Now this is something that if you just Google how to prepare for interviews, this will be, I'm sure, in the top 3, if not more, top 3 questions or top 3 suggestions which come to you. Now what is it that is knowing the school? Sorry, I mean, I'm going to come to this later. Let's go back to understanding. There are a couple of other things that might be important to take out from the SOP. For example, medium of interaction. Now, if they tell you that the interview is going to be a Zoom meeting, then you should do, you should first of all download the software, try and play with it, look at an online tutorial. If it's Google Meet, now if you already knew in the SOP letter it was written, or maybe it was told to you through an email or over phone that your interview is going to be conducted on Google Meet. You do not wait for the day of the interview to download Google Meet on your phone or your app or your tablet or your computer. You should test run that before. You should also test run it with a tutor, a friend, a mentor, a parent on 2 different devices, so that you know exactly how you are communicating through it. Is there any lag while transmission happens, so that you can upgrade which device you should be using. So using the right kind of device is as important as downloading the software beforehand or knowing how to operate that software beforehand. So this is something that is very critical, because as you might be reading, there are many different versions of these video calling apps available, and many institutions, especially at university level, they have subscriptions to a certain software. So their preferred mode will be that. It won't be according to the convenience of the applicant, but of course, how the university functions. So it's always good to be familiar with that. Also, if you will be asked to screen share, then you should test how to screen share. If you're screen sharing, then other important things, like if you're asked to, say for example, showcase your portfolio and you are going to screen share and show it, then you should read from the other device, how is this going to look? How big should be my font? Do I increase the size of my graphic? Is this not the color? Because what you see on computer and what gets transmitted are slightly different. If you're going to talk about, for example, a graphic that you design, which has yellow ochre in it, and sometimes yellow ochre tends to become lime green or lime yellow by the time it gets transmitted. That happens differently in different softwares, or rather the mode through which you're. So while you're talking, you can say you may not be seeing the colors that I'm talking about, but these are the colors. These are the colors I was working with, and this is the reason why I work with yellow ochre. Some sort of positivity or something like that. If you're going to already know the duration of the interview and the mode of the interview, for example, you know that you have 10 minutes. So the format will be that you will have 10 minutes, and then there will be 2 minutes where you can ask a question to the interviewer, or you can put forward any worries or any inquiries that you have. Okay, so then you already know, then you should time yourself. For example, use a phone. It's very good to always have a stopwatch on and time yourself before the interview. Just do a dress rehearsal, sitting in the right position where you're going to be sitting for your interview. And then ask another a person, or maybe just put it on another device and put it on record on the other side and see how you did. If, for example, you are a writer and you know that you're going to sometimes blur the line while you're talking, you should also break down those 10 minutes into different components. Like, what is going to be important in my portfolio? I will be spending 1 minute on this, 30 seconds on this, 10 seconds on this. So you already know that, and keep looking at the stopwatch. You should just keep it in front of you and keep looking at it while you're talking. It is really helpful. Test the internet speed on in the like a few minutes before or an hour before your interview time. And there are lots of online speed test softwares which are available, or websites which are available. You should also try, for example, I often do that, switch between a phone network, which is your you are either on a Wi-Fi or you are on a hotspot. So you can test both of them to see which is giving you a better speed. And it should at least be a 1 Mbps, because it's difficult to communicate with the video and audio together below that. So make sure you have that. In case it is known, for example, it's slightly cloudy today here in Gurgaon. So if I'm going to anticipate it, there's a trend that when it rains here, I lose electricity for an hour, or maybe my internet speed becomes slower, and that's whatever. I'm using a dial modem. I'm not a dial-up modem. I'm not using, say, I don't have an Ethernet thing in my area. So you should know that, and you should inform your contact at the interview cell if you are going to face some issues. Now, there are many ways out of the internet speed issue, because this is we are still sort of in progress towards a more digitally equipped, or rather completely equipped country, as a country. So they're in different parts and in different ways there are certain issues. So we usually, as academics, we accommodate that. So there might be a phone interview as an alternate. You should also check this with your contact at the university that you were conversing with, or with the email ID from which you received your letter for the interview. Just ask them, is there any alternate if in case my internet sort of misbehaves during that time, can I have a phone interview? So that you have that phone number fed into your phone. If you are unable to connect online, say for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and they say, okay, so we'll sort of call you, you're ready to receive the phone as well as make the call if you're asked. And you are ready with the computer or the tablet open with your portfolio, if it's going to be a portfolio interview, and you can run them through it. So nothing to panic about. You should not worry about this afterwards. You should worry about it before, that if this happens, I will do this. Always have a plan B, and then of course a plan C. Okay, so one is that, I mean, if they say no, we will only do it by looking at the screen and face to face online, then you ask for and you ask to be excused and ask for an alternate time. Can I come back later in the day? Something like that. Have a plan ready, like already discuss those things. We've already spoken a little bit about know your portfolio. There are many other ways of looking at it. Your portfolio is not just your skills. There are also other things. For example, critical thinking as such is again a part of how your attitude is, of how your how do you gain knowledge, how do you use it. So you may or may not have heard about this directly, but yes, while interviewers are talking to design aspirants, critical thinking is something they are looking at. Do you really deep dive, and are you really savvy about research, or do you not have the patience to wait for an answer to emerge and you sort of jump to the next one or whatever. If you have any other extra skills, for example, you have had the opportunity to learn a software, you can say that I was really very I was not loaded with a lot of work during COVID, and I kind of learned this new skill. You can talk about that. You learned how to grow things. That's again not a skill which is directly related to you, but yes, you could relate it back to your own aspiration of being a designer, and you think that, okay, so growing things, I have understood that it can be rewarding to engage with nature, and while you're holding things, you got the ideas about new shapes or new kind of ecosystems or new kind of systems of dealing with shapes and colors and how nature expresses itself. You could always tie it back. Say it's a smart way of talking about yourself without really sounding like you're bragging. Now, nailing an interview is like you don't want to sound too desperate, like over the top, like you really, really are like on the edge and you're sitting like this and you sort of looking in your camera and giving an interview. Or you don't even want to say like, okay, I'm not interested. I will see. No, it's an in between thing. You are alert. You are totally devoted to this activity which is happening right now. Do not have any other distractions, or you're not thinking about anything else. So you're totally here. But at the same time, you know that you possess certain qualities or certain I would say attributes which make you appropriate to be selected as a design candidate. So it's like a fine line, but yes, you will have to yourself tell them, because they don't know you personally or they're not your teacher. So of course they've never engaged with you so far. Making projects, if you're very fond of making things, it's a great attribute, and it's very sought after in designers. So you must, even if you have not included it in your portfolio, you must speak about it. Whether it is you're a fashion design aspirant and you construct garments and you sew them yourself. So, or you have taken training in say some sort of textile making activity, maybe tie and dye, maybe you learned embroidery. It's not really critical, but it's nice to drop that in, saying that yes, I am engaging with these kind of activities, which as a student I think is going to only refine my position. I'm going to get better at expressing myself or being able to choose the right kind of process to finally execute my garment designs or write about them. If you write about them, talk about that. Critical writing is as important as critical thinking, because when you analyze things and you're able to evaluate things and write your personal point of view on it, or your deduction of a certain thing, that's also great. That's great for the interviewer. It can give him or her an insight about how you can actually process things in your mind. So again, I'm going to say that just keep to a story or a few stories ready in case they are needed, or if you can also run through your portfolio like it's a story, it will be great, because it's like a kind of unique when you have people come in and tell you similar things. I'll tell you a few interviewees who come in and say the standard things. It's almost like they have a script, and that script is taken from popular websites, and you just run through it. Okay, so I'm very good at drawing, so I want to be a designer. So what's the connection? If you really read it even somewhere that yeah, you have to be very good at design, you should inquire and investigate why, because it's a form of expression. So you can just, if you just change that, you're good at drawing, yeah, you can say the same thing. I'm very good at drawing. I think I have a very good visual communication skill through my drawings. Which means that it's an added asset, and somebody can directly, somebody can think that, oh, you know the sort of words, or you know how the connect is between what you have as a skill and what is it that a designer be armed with. I'll come back to broadcasting your work slightly later. Yes, I forgot research about your project. If you're very fond of conducting research, or you had a long research behind any output, always put that forward. For example, you tried to say you were a visual communication aspirant, and you tried to create an animation. You just started off by creating GIFs, and then you graduated to creating your own character. You tried paper cutting, or you tried drawing line drawings, anything, but you did an experiment, and the end result is just a duck walking, on a line. But if you tell the whole story, or how you got around it, and it took you 2 months to get here, or 1 month to get here, or 2 weeks to get here, it gives the picture. It gives the picture. And it's also not, by the way, it's not faking. It's really talking about things you do, and you do well, or you don't do well. Even that is important, what you can't do well, and your failures will give the right picture to the interviewee. So try and get into that mode before you start talking during the interview. Knowing the school. So this is again not your conventional way of knowing the school. Okay, everyone goes to the website and checks out you. you might think it's very silly to even bring it up. But if you really are going to school where the ethos is that we are a hands-on learning school, it's not just those few words. Hands-on how? Just try and find out hands-on how. For example, this image on your left is actually the house which was designed by faculty and students from Bahar School. And this is obviously it was designed by Meyer and the Bahar School dean, I'm getting. But what I mean is, this is the kind of design philosophy or work philosophy they have, that they encourage the students to form groups with their tutors and take up real life projects or life projects. So if you go into an interview where you already know that, then you okay, I'm sorry, please do tell me if I go offline, because like I said, it's raining here, and it does happen sometimes that I lose the network. Can I get back? Yeah. Where did you lose me? Do I need to go to the previous slide, or is it okay? Can I stay here?
No, ma'am. I think it's good. We can just continue.
Okay, we can just continue. So I was talking about the school, and so when you knowing about the school means knowing about what their philosophy is. They also usually write about what is it that is expected from the graduates. So if you know that graduate attribute, and you can connect something that you have already done, or you're working on, or you aspire to work on. Like, for example, if a school, like I was saying earlier, that a school which has got a huge archives, and they completely document everything, they are proud of their research cell, then you must indicate that you really see yourself in the future as an ardent researcher, or you want to get into academics, or you are looking at this as your road to the right kind of PhD, and you already think that you love researching, or you can show an example. This is what I did for my project, and I think the part which is not seen in this final output is the research behind it. And if they can make that connection of how you arrived at that final thing in your portfolio and what was the research behind it, then it is like really like bang on. So keep these things in mind. Sometimes it's also important to know who the panel is going to be. Now, mostly it's difficult to just inquire this from who's going to be my panel. But if you know already that you're going to an institute, and it has its faculty and dean list, and the principal list online, and you're going, for example, say you're going for visual communication, and you see that a certain person is the HOD, or is the dean of that part of the school, or is actually the faculty which engages most maybe with the outside, like he or she is the person who is delivering lectures. So you can know a little bit about their work also, and it's not like for impressing that person directly, but you will know what is the kind of faculty you're going to work with. So when they are in the panel and they are raising questions, you will know what kind of answers are going to be, which project, for example, you should select as your most important or your most favorite project to project. Like when they ask you, tell us about one work that you did which was absolutely your best, or you thought you could practice your design instinct the best in that. Now again, you are not you're not already a doctor before you go for your MBBS interview or your MBBS examination, but there are certain things which are expected, and they are slightly more advanced than just another commoner or another person who walks into the door and says, okay, so you have a design school, can I get in? It's not like that. You have already done your research, and you know that this is what is going to be in the school practiced while you are there. So you're prepared. I will move to the next one. Let's look at it. Again, discipline background is very critical. Now, how do you get discipline background? There are a couple of questions which are very common. The first one probably is if you have a knowledge about how will you practice. In the sense that if you're going, say you're aspiring to be an automobile designer, and you go for an interview where their program is product design and is not industrial design, or it's not really automobile design that you're opting for. you must make that connection yourself, or you must know that as a product designer, I am supposed to practice like this, or I know that I have been inside a product designer's office, or I have followed such and such product designer, and I know how I am expected to behave or professionally act later on. So it could be anybody you follow, or it could be actually the knowledge of a product design project is executed. Now, this is not very tough to know in today's times. Just a simple Google search can lead you to a designer's page, or to maybe an aspiring student's page for like you, people like you. Or I've also found many times there are interesting videos of people who are students who have interviewed previously, or are all beginning to practice. So they give tips about what really is expected in this profession. So it's really good to know that. Maybe it's not asked, but you should be armed with that information. Again, a very favorite or popular question would be the designer that you aspire to be. Now, how do you choose that, or how do you know who's your favorite? If you don't have a favorite, I'm assuming most of you already have your particular favorites, and you know why you like them. That's important, because indirectly that shows what you align with. For example, an aspiring product designer is asked, what's your favorite product? And they say, okay, I think iPhone 5 SE was my favorite product. Now, why particularly? Yes, because the kind of boxy design it had. It had an edge instead of a curve. Its screen size was optimal. Its interface was the most intuitive, because it was less cluttered. So what's the difference between iPhone 6, iPhone 8, iPhone 10, and iPhone 5 SE? So as a prospective product designer, they will see that you already have the ability to critique something. While you're critiquing, or when you're asked to critique something, like for example, the conversation leads to, okay, what do you know lately? What is Tesla doing? And you come up with that car model they try to launch. And anyway, so you have a conversation around an important current topic, and you have an opinion about it. It shows that you have critical thinking ability, and you're trying to engage with the profession already. So that's a good sign. Now, what you see on the screen here is this is called a bionic chandelier by a bioengineer. This is designer who's a bioengineer, Julian, and this is his research, years of research of creating a synthetic material, which is actually a living material, synthetically created, in the sense that it's not a leaf, but it behaves like a leaf. It actually conducts photosynthesis and releases oxygen. And now, after developing this product a few years ago, now he's looking at a larger scale implementation, which is a building facade where this whole member or membrane can be created, which will breathe. And actually, in that way, the city will get benefited from the presence of that building cover or the skin of that building. So what I'm trying to say is that if you know about, so this, if I just drop that as my favorite product from the last 10 years, then they will be intrigued. Why do you like this? So, okay, so this is what is innovation, I think, because this is a breakthrough change. I mean, I can really take this as not going on a back burner and trying to find a solution, but actually doing an active solution which will change the way the problem exists. So there's a deeper thinking behind this. So if you are going to be say, whether you're a product designer or an interior designer, and you come up with this as an aspiring goal, then it represents what your final ambition is and what you align with. Okay, so that's important. What basically values you aspire, and many schools offer value-based learning that might be written on their ethos or their motto of imparting education. So then you are able to really project your best, like how you should be thinking. If you don't have that already thought through, then you might land up with certain names only, but you can't make the connect between how you will practice professionally. You may like somebody's work, but you may not like their ethos. You might also say that I love what these people do, but yes, they're not engaging with, say, craft. They're not engaging or respecting a heritage, or maybe that's important to you, but it's not showing. But yes, if I were to practice in the future, these are the 5 things I'll keep in mind. something like that. Okay. Okay, lots about possible questions I've already given out, but yes, innovation, critical thinking, response to issues, knowing and being sensitive to things around you is one of the more critical abilities which are put into these days. Because we're not just talking about a degree here, we are also talking about creating citizens, valuable citizens. So that's at our school, we really keep that as a top. Being a good citizen is one of the values which are very important to us. Instead of just having designers who can draw very well, or who can produce, or who can, represent or talk or sell, whatever you want to call it. That's one of the critical values. So you might want to think about what is design as a profession to you. Now, this is again can come in many standard answers, but what will matter? What will matter is really your in-depth analysis of how. I'm also not talking about the usual young aspiration of I will change the world through design. Okay, many people have tried to change the world through design. If you, for example, go back and give the example of Buckminster Fuller and his geodesic dome, and his the house which looked like an automobile and was made with stainless steel, which becomes relevant in today's time again, because yes, we are all trying to find a solution to the end of the world, or maybe everybody is panicking and thinking, how do we shell up our house and we stay away from people? It's not just social distancing, it's actually distancing ourselves physically from everything that can cause harm. So knowing a few things about what you can talk about, or really what the profession needs from its practitioners, can also be valuable, will definitely be valued by the interviewer. And it can be valuable to just have two lines written aside and ready. If you're prompted or asked, you can give the right answer. Okay. Problem solving skills, you can show it by some of the examples from the portfolio. Again, if you know exactly what are you projecting through your portfolio beyond the skill that has been shown, it is great. It will be really taken as a very big positive. Okay. Now, certain physical etiquettes. When you would walk into an interview, you would be walking the walk, which means people will be able to see your body language directly. There will be no other disruption or discontinuation, or grainy screen, or sometimes you can. It's like the saying, lost in translation, sometimes lost in projection. Like that, probably today's new phrase should be lost in projection. So sometimes we think that it's not critical, but this is not a house party call you are making to your friends to play Pictionary on a Sunday. This is going to be as close to a formal interview, and your only chance to showcase yourself to a panel of people who will be taking the decision on your induction. So time is of essence. If you are given, for example, the time of 11 o'clock as your slot, be ready before that. If somebody has had, for example, we've had this issue that certain times we have preponed the interview time by 5 minutes because the previous person's interview got over, or they were not able to connect, or something happened, and we decided, okay, if the next person's ready, let's bring them on. That is a very good attitude. If you're already ready and you get a call and say, okay, so can you just come online now, or you get an email says, okay, are you online, can you just join now? It'll be great. If it's a class where they ask you to stay online, stand in another space, and want you to join another call, you're always there and listening, that's also a great sign. Also be aware of the time that you're given, like I said earlier. So I cannot stress enough that the little time that you have, you should use it wisely. You should not use it for fumbling for words, or looking through the papers, or looking for something physically, or asking say, for example, another person to mute you or unmute you. Or so know what device you're using, how will you use it, where are the buttons, where are the right kind of tools which you will require while you are talking. If, for example, you have forgotten to send something which you had made physically, and you couldn't take a picture of it, or it was not ready that time, you've done something else since the interview, and now that many people are not able to conduct those time-based design problems, they might be looking at interviews just to sort of understand if you have value to add to their institution, and you really want to show it, then keep it ready on your table, and you just pick it and bring it to the front. And you should have practiced how you want to show it. Do you want to turn it around and show it like that? Do you want to show it like this? That should also be thought of. You should not be really like in the last minute calling your mom and saying, mom, can you just pass me that? or okay, I'm going to get up, go and bring it back. That's also not acceptable. Which you should be properly ready with everything here around you and ready to talk. Appearance, I'm going to address separately. Formality, yes, language formality is very important. Please do not use slangs. It's always a no. Also, do not use certain words. For example, many of us have the habit of starting every sentence with a so or perhaps or maybe or so. Just be conscious while you're talking that you're not sort of overemphasizing on the same word again and again, and it's repetitive. Formality of the talk also means that you are able to project the vocabulary you have from your field. So that's important. Implicit language is how you behave. For example, if the body language things that you might have previously discovered are also true, like sitting straight on like a chair with a high back and with your hands on the table is a great attitude. But sitting, slouching like this to the front with your hands between your legs or sitting like that, they're all no. So these are all applicable for even online interviews. How is your projection? It's important. For example, appearance. Now, if you're going to project your screen, please know that you only have the right bars open. Like if you were Googling on Pinterest about a portfolio tip, don't let that be open. If you have a chat window, which is your messenger or something open, and people start sending you chats and they pop up while you are presenting, that's also totally wrong. Background is critical. Have a clutter-free background or a background you are willing to project. For example, you have a background like me, like with all your works, books, or something like that. You want to project that, it's okay. But don't have a background which has a very, say, a curtain which is moving, or it has sort of graphics or light is too bold. All of those are no. For example, the center image in the top row, what I call the Godfather. You can't have light coming from behind you. You have to have light falling on your face. You should be seen like this. Your frame should be visible properly in the screen. The bottom right, the bottom two images that you see, on the left is the person with regular room background. On the right is a virtual background. Even that is possible in many apps. So you might want to do that if you don't want to project your background. How you're going to speak? So on the top left, you see that's my image and the student's image. The student's image is grainy, then they're not sitting in a well-lit space. It's very difficult. Disturbances on your top right, that's on somebody. So this is a professor who was talking about a very serious issue from South Korea, and suddenly his children came into the room and they were disturbing him, and he wasn't moved by that. He kept continuing to talk formally because obviously this was going on national television. So I'm saying that have that already sorted. Like tell one of the parents, I'm going to be in interview for this half an hour, or at least have them guard the room while you are having your interview. If there is a noise, then stop, pause, take an excuse, like ask them to excuse me for a moment, and because there is noise, can I just have few seconds, and then mute yourself, unmute yourself once that has passed. It could be a noisy truck, it could be some construction work which must have prompted somebody to use a drill or something. So be aware of your surroundings and also know that this is what you're projecting. If you have a noisy fan, for example, already know that, switch it off while you're in your interview time. Know what you're transmitting is what the interviewer is going to see and listen, and they don't want to be irked by it, they don't want to be disturbed by things. Okay, so you can plan that. Again, knowing important things, like I said, on the bottom left, what you see is a set of meta skills which is projected for your age, which is the robotic age or the post-robotic age now. On the top left is an excerpt from a talk by a designer, Pam McNally, who was talking about disruption, like everything will be digital and everything will be touchless and projected, and we will be completely in an world which has half virtual, half real. So she was talking about that. Maybe you could pick up a few things which are there with you in case there are asked, like, do you think after COVID everybody will go touchless? You can say some, so you can drop her name and say, okay, so like her, some people are really thinking the extreme, but as designers, we can find other ways. Okay. I hope I'm still audible. Ask questions when you're prompted. It's an opportunity to display your knowledge. You can, for example, ask a question which is related to the ideology of the school. You could ask, like, it says that you do this, but is it is this means this, or does it mean that? Like, as a school, would you, for example, approve of some other designer's work? You can ask. It would be a very random and small question. It could also be very particular about the course or your future, and anything to do with, do we have access to the library at other times, whatever. I mean, just have a question ready if you have in your mind about the profession, which is your opportunity to ask them and sort of display your knowledge or inquisitiveness during that time. Yeah, you have to thank the people while you're leaving. Sometimes you're asked, what is it that you expect from the institution? This is a very off question. You're not prepared for it mostly. But yes, what do you expect from the institution who is going to provide you education? So if you expect the right things, for example, again, going back to my example of archives, if you expect the institution to train you in the art of conducting research and documentation, then you are at the right place. So, yes, projecting, broadcasting yourself, putting your work online is critical for your generation now on. I mean, like, it's going to be, so if you have already sent your portfolio, but it is available somewhere else as a handle, it could be an Insta page, it could be any of these places. For example, if you have a very good writing and you have a WordPress page, mention it while you're talking. Sometimes they get into it, like they just ask you to post a shortcut in the chat box, or maybe they will see it after you leave. If you have a portfolio box, you can project that my more of my work is available on portfolio box. You can say that. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my talk, and I think so. Yeah, videos. Last point about videos. If you're going to any videos, make sure, like, you might be seeing some lag. You might be seeing this as, passing images. I have a video which plays at different paces. So video projection is best when you project. If you, for example, if you're using Cisco, you project directly as the video file and not use a present me mode, or you put it on YouTube and play it, or you copy paste the link in the web or the chat box, because when they see it on web directly, there will be no lag. So projection of videos is slightly tricky, especially if you're going for an animation program or a motion program. So that is pretty much the end of my talk. I'm ready for questions.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So guys, if you have any doubts, you can time to ask your doubts.